Hello, my name is Alicia McDaniel, and I am the co-founder of Virtual Gallery Online. Today, I am speaking with a North London-based artist, Lisa Price, who is currently exhibiting work in the project space through her exhibition Walk the Line. Welcome, Lisa.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for being here today. The
Thank you
first
so
question
much for
I had,
having me.
yeah, thank you. Um, the first question I had for you was, could you please elaborate on your body of work in the exhibition? For those who maybe aren't familiar with the pieces, how did these paintings come to be?
So the pieces in the exhibition were mainly made, not all of them, but mainly made during lockdown here. And we've had 3 lockdowns in the UK. And so normally I would have been teaching quite a lot and not had so much time to do my paintings. So it actually gave me, I wasn't able to teach in my studio here. So it actually gave me a lot of time to work on my own work. And so during the first lockdown, I did quite a lot of walking just because there was nothing else to do. So I started to record my walks and my journeys. And so most of the work in the exhibition is about the journeys that I was taking during that time, and collecting pigment on my walks. And so I make all my own watercolors from the pigments that I find out and about, either in London, or we spend quite a lot of time in Scotland as well, when we can. And so I collect those pigments and I make them into watercolor. So a lot of the processes are almost like the build up to the piece and then the making of the piece itself.
Yeah, I really admire how involved you are with your pieces and just how much energy is put into just making the pigment, into applying it. I think it's really special that you have that connection to the
Oh, thank
materials in
you.
your work.
Yeah, it's become really important because before it was sort of I was experimenting and I wasn't really sure if it was going to work. And I don't know if you know too much about my background of why I started to make the paints themselves, but for those that don't, I went vegan sort of 3 or 4 years ago, and so I was looking into what I was using and what I needed and what I didn't need, and not just my diet, but also um, the things that I consumed, things that I bought. So I was looking at my own art practice and how I could sort of minimize the things that I was buying. And so that seemed like quite a good way to be able to join both my life and my art together in a way.
Yeah, that's really awesome. And that was actually one of my other questions, but this kind of brings us to a question I had. What sort of advice could you give to others? How can we deepen our personal connection to Mother Nature and the earth around us? I know you mentioned a lot of that. You attempt to do that for yourself and your work. Mhm.
Yeah, so I think I mean, I would say that it's definitely personal preference how far you want to go. And I am very careful about not pushing my own feelings and opinions on other people. But I would say just I think for most people, we can look at the things that we mainly buy, probably not just our diet, but things that we sort of go out and buy in the shops and things that we don't necessarily need. So maybe just taking a moment to think, do I actually need that? Is that something I already have? Am I just buying it again? Or maybe there are shops that provide like a refill service, so you're not just buying more and more like hair shampoo in plastic containers. And there are lots and lots of little things, but getting out in nature and wherever you are, you don't need to be in the countryside, you don't need to have, mountains near you to climb, but you can find little pockets. And I'm sure where everyone is, there are sort of green spaces that you can find. They might not be big, but getting out in nature does make you appreciate it, not only for your own well-being, but just being able to think a little bit broader about the impact you're having um, on the world itself. And I think just the small things that we do they all add up, and not everyone has to go vegan, or not everyone has to make sure they don't buy anything ever again. But I do think it's important to start really reflecting on what we actually need to have.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. And, that's really great advice. And we really need to start taking care of our surrounding environment for a lot of reasons. And I think that this past year just kind of like highlighted that importance. Not only should we be taking care of ourselves, but we should be taking care of our environment. And yeah, thank you so much for that.
Mm.
Um, yeah, so something that I found personally challenging during the pandemic, I guess, was finding some motivation to start the creative process. I think that with everything going on in the news media and just, in life itself and, our personal experiences, for many artists I've talked to as well, it can be challenging to kind of find that space for yourself to kind of make, especially when people don't have access to their studios.
Yeah.
I was displaced in Sacramento. Studio was in San Francisco.
Oh no.
So I didn't have that. So yeah, I guess how did you find the motivation to keep making during lockdown?
So, I mean, I experienced similar feelings as well, especially with all the news and everything they were feeding us. And I was really obsessed with watching the news for like morning, evening. I was watching it so much, and I started to realize it was really having an effect on how I felt and my motivation. And so I had to stop. Basically, I had to limit myself to how much of the news that I was consuming, because it really started to affect how I was able to just be day to day, because I was just constantly worried about everything that was happening. But I'm really lucky. I have my studio 5 minutes from my house. And I've had my studio for 4 years now. But as I said before, normally I was teaching. So it sort of was, I think I was one of the lucky ones where actually I had more space than I would normally have. And I kind of tried to just use it to my advantage. So before, I wouldn't have my studio set up with all my stuff in here. I would put things away, so when the kids came in, they could use the space, and then I'd bring them all back out again. So I actually found having that separation was really good for my practice. But I still did have definite weeks of, I just, what am I doing? What's the point in doing this? Why? There's so much other, there's a lot of other bigger things going on. And I had moments like that, but I would say mostly I did find that actually going for those walks, making sure that I was outside as much as I could be, helped me focus to come back to actually then sit and do some painting. And my painting is quite intense because there's so much small details. I do end up feeling quite uncomfortable actually, because of the way that I have to sort of sit and paint. So it actually pushed me to work in a different way, but then so like this piece behind me is like one of the biggest pieces I've made, because normally I'd make things very small. And so it sort of pushed me out of my comfort zone and allowed me to work bigger. And this piece actually came from me being quite frustrated and annoyed, and just like, I just need to get on the paper, and I just whacked it on the wall. And actually this is very different for me, and it's nice because it sort of took me on a different path.
Yeah, I was actually going to comment. It's a very beautiful painting.
Thank
So
you.
I
It's
was
not quite
just about
finished.
to
It's been
ask.
on the wall for a while now, and it's not finished. It's just sort of sitting there.
Oh, I love the colors.
Oh,
It's
thank
great.
you. Yeah, so this color actually I found on my street. So
Mhm.
it's a brick that had fallen off a wall on my street, and decided that I was going to try and make some paint from it, and actually really pleased with the color that came out. So it's nice to have those connections between where you are, and they sort of tell a story on their own.
Yeah, that's really great and very unique about your work too. I mean, I
Thank
think
you.
that that intimacy you have to the material you find, and I love the idea that you found this just like in your home street. Like that's really great.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the streets that I don't take any notice of, because I'm just trying to get from A to B.
Yeah.
And then I had a friend sort of ask me, oh, because they lived on my street too, and they moved away. So they said, oh, if you see anything from our street, like let me know, because we'd love to have a piece.
Oh,
So then it got me thinking, like, I never look on our street for anything because I'm just sort of rushing up and down all the time. So yeah, it was nice, actually. That was nice to find it.
that's great. I think it's a great way to memorialize it in a way. I think that's very interesting that yeah, because I'm assuming you use a lot of plants and your pigments, or what kind of materials do you use to
Well,
make?
actually, I used to use plants, but I don't actually use any plants now.
Mhm.
Before, when I very first started making my own, I actually started making my own inks and not watercolor. So I used all plant-based materials.
Mm.
But what I was finding was that one, the colors would start off really bright and vibrant, and then after time, because they're plant materials, they don't have the same sort of light fastness of other paints. They started to fade, and that started to worry me. But also, I mean, in a way, I liked it because they're sort of changing with our planet that's also changing quite rapidly. But then if you're also selling work, then I didn't want to have an email in 5 years time being like, there's nothing on my piece of paper.
Good.
So yeah, and it also used a lot of because I was using gas to heat the water
Mm.
to make the inks. I was really conscious that actually I was using quite a lot of energy. So then I moved to finding sort of rocks, earth, clay, things like that, which I grind up in a pestle and mortar. And then I use a process to make it into watercolor.
That's really beautiful.
It's really nice. And actually, the connection between the rocks and making them into watercolor, they tell their own story, but also they have their own smell and they have their own sounds. And
Mm.
I recently just made a new watercolor from some sand that I picked up in Scotland. And when I was making it, it actually smelt of the sea, and it kind of took me back to being on holiday in Scotland. And I was like, oh, that's where I want to be now.
Scotland's beautiful. That's amazing, that you can take a piece with you and yeah, memorialize it for others to kind of enjoy. That's really great. And
Thank you.
yeah. um yeah, I just want to make sure I have a little list here.
No, no, go for it.
If you notice. um let's see. Let's see. Yeah, I think we actually hit the mark with all of those.
Oh, good.
Great. Yeah, I love the big ones. This is awesome. And
Oh, thank you. I really wanted to say thank you so much for having my work on your site, and it looks really lovely and you've done such a great job, and I really appreciate that, you chose my work to be on there. So thank you so much.
thank you. We're very small.
No, but I think it's a great thing that you're doing, and I do think it's especially in this time where things are very uncertain still, having the opportunity to be able to show your work online, even though I'm very conscious that my work doesn't always show in its best light from photographs. It's so lovely to see it up there, and a little solo show, so that's really nice, and I really appreciate you accepting my work for that.
Well, thank you, Lisa. Sam and I were just in love. We
Oh,
both love
thank
your paintings,
you.
and
It's really
we're very
kind.
excited to be working with you. And it was awesome. You were first international artist we featured.
Oh, am I?
Thank you so much.
Oh.
That's great.
That's nice.
And yeah, I think yeah, what really inspired us to create this space is yeah, just to uplift voices of other artists, uplift each other, and just connect artists to other people, that maybe might not have had a chance to see your work in person, or have known who you are before, or vice versa. I think that I'm already thinking of some artists in the Bay Area I want to connect you with.
Oh, that would be awesome
Thank
if you
you.
could do that. Yeah, that would be lovely. There are so many artists that I follow on Instagram that are in America. And there's so many amazing pigments that they manage to collect that we just do not have here, which is the interesting thing when you're sort of collecting pigments. You kind of almost have like pockets of different palettes. So like depending on where you are, the palettes are so different to the ones that you can find in your local area. So yeah, like Canada, America, they all have really awesome, very cool pigments. But also what you were saying about connecting artists together, I think that's such an important thing right now, especially because we are sort of not able to sort of mingle how we would normally be able to sort of converse with each other in person. But also I think that artists have found it quite difficult to have not been okay. And the people that I speak to online, everyone sort of puts out this persona of everything's fine and I'm selling all this work and life's great, when actually that's not the reality of it. And for most people, that's not the reality of it. And so I try with my social media to try and be quite honest about that, and share the wins and share the failures and sort of say, oh, I haven't sold any work for ages, and you know, it's fine, you know. And then the more people you speak to, the more you realize actually you're not alone in that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I appreciate you showing that vulnerability for sure. And I think that is something that is kind of smoothed over, even, maybe especially in the White Cube Gallery too. You don't really see the artist unless you go to the opening or second Saturday. So it's really great to kind of see where the creator was when they were making a certain body of work. Because I think that's equally important to inform the work at some time,
Yeah,
for
yeah,
sure.
definitely.
Yeah, and I appreciate it. And I love that we get the pleasure of talking to you and diving deeper into your process and your
Oh,
experiences.
thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure talking to you.
Yeah, this was great. Yeah, I'll send you an email and I'll connect you to some artists I'm thinking of. And thank you so much. Like your work is incredible and you're you're phenomenal.
Oh, thank you. That's so kind. Thank you so
You
much.
did
I
it.
really enjoyed having a chat with you.
Yeah, I'm glad.
And I hope you have a lovely rest of your day.
You
You're
too.
not too busy.
Bye. You too. Thank you so much, Lisa.
All
This
right.
was amazing.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.